G'day guys, Jake here from Journey Van Build, and welcome to video 1 of this brand new van conversion series where I show you step by step how to build your own ultimate little camper. Today we're tackling the first step of any DIY van build, stripping the van out until we have an empty shell to work with. This is critical for uncovering any hidden rust throughout the van and giving you access to insulate in the coming steps. Let's get stuck into it. The first thing you need to do is remove any extra components that came with the van. That could be things like cargo barriers, shelving, drawers, or seats, depending on what kind of van you've bought. This step is pretty self-explanatory, mostly just involving undoing a few bolts or screws here and there. So it will usually just require a simple socket set and a drill, or in some cases, maybe a grinder. But there are two common items to remove that I want to address quickly, and that is seats and cargo barriers. If you are permanently removing seats from a van, it can become an engineering or compliance issue depending on where you live. Here in Australia, when a mechanic signs off on a roadworthy certificate, they need to visually inspect all the seats that are listed on the compliance or VIN plate. It's not a huge deal, but it's worth checking the rules in your state to see if you need an engineer to sign off on any seats that you're planning on permanently removing. Removing cargo barriers, on the other hand, is not a compliance issue, but they can make you some money. You could choose to keep the cargo barrier or the cab divider. They do add a little bit of security and give you some defined separation in your camper, but still, I usually take them out because they do take up a little bit of space, and they also completely remove the ability to access the front cab from the back of the van in an emergency, which I know is really important to a lot of people. If you do decide to remove the cargo barrier, just do not throw it away. At the time of filming, these things are listed online from $150 to $300 depending on the van and the condition. So always check whether the cargo barriers can be sold or any of the other items you're pulling out of the van for that matter. Once the van is mostly empty, the next step is removing the interior wall panels. In a lot of vans, these are held in with little plastic plugs or clips. A trim removal tool can help in some situations, but you definitely don't need anything fancy. A small flathead screwdriver or a scraper, whatever you can get your hands on to get some leverage will usually get the job done. But really, as you'll see throughout most of this video, I just end up pulling most of the panels off with my hands, as long as you're careful to give the panel some support from behind so you don't snap anything. The plugs should pull away without too much resistance. Definitely keep these wall panels. Even if you're not reinstalling them, they're really handy as templates for whatever you will be lining those walls with. Personally, I usually carpet over the original panels and reuse them behind cabinetry, then reline the more visible side of the van as a bit of a timber feature wall. So get clear on what you want before throwing any of these wall panels away. And before I forget, make sure you keep all of these plastic plugs. Whether you're reusing the factory wall panels or not, there's a massive chance you will need these clips to attach the door panels, and trust me, you'll be kicking yourself if you find out a month down the track that you're 2 clips short. The door panels are exactly the same to remove as the wall panels, but they tend to cause some confusion once they're off because they look a little bit different. Underneath the timber panel on the sliding door here, you should find this protective sheet of plastic glued over the opening. That's to protect the door's locking mechanisms from any water that could drip down into this panel if the door was open while it was raining, for example. You can remove this plastic to allow you to insulate the door later, but just be aware that because the door has so much structural reinforcement in the way, it can be really difficult to insulate anyway. Personally, unless you're really trying to go all out with your insulation because you live somewhere quite cold, then I don't really worry about this because you can't get much in there anyway, but that's up to you. Just make sure that if you do remove this plastic cover, that you reinstall it with some fresh silicone or Sikaflex to protect the locking mechanism. The rear door doesn't have the same plastic cover, but it does have some structural reinforcement in there, which makes installation difficult. I do still remove this panel though, because I need it off while installing a reversing camera, which I highly recommend. And I'm able to carpet over that panel and maybe replace it depending on the condition that it's in. Again, you will want those wall clips to reattach these door panels, so don't throw them away. The ceiling is a little more technical because there's usually a light involved, but it's actually super easy. It's a good idea to completely remove the factory interior light from the van because it's connected to your starter battery. Most vans will be very similar in removing this light. You just need to undo the 2 screws here, disconnect the plug at the back, and tape up the plug just before covering it up for some peace of mind. In this van, the ceiling clips popped straight out, but sometimes you'll need to unscrew or push the center of the clip in first and then pull the body of the clip out with a trim tool. The center strip in the ceiling usually comes out pretty easily, and the factory ceiling panels themselves are super lightweight and easy to remove on your own. Personally, I love the look of a timber ceiling in my camper van, so I do usually throw away this factory ceiling once it's removed, but reusing the original ceiling lining could also be a great option because it's lightweight, it's super easy to install, and it's free, of course. I've seen people cover it up with fabric or some kind of pattern to give it a nicer finish without having to build a full timber ceiling in the van as well. Just remember, if you're planning on reusing the factory ceiling lining, then you have to save all these clips. This little bracket here gives a lot of people trouble, but it's actually really simple. Just carefully bend this back and forth a few times, give it a wriggle, and it'll snap off nice and flush against the ceiling. Step 5 is pulling up the floor covering, and this is the most important part of the entire strip out. And guys, if you're getting any value from this video, it would mean a lot to me if you would save this video and subscribe to the channel to help this content reach other DIY van builders like yourself. Now, you really do need to pull up the subfloor covering in your van. Whether it's carpet, rubber matting, plywood, or even what looks like a finished subfloor, I would not skip this step. The floor pan is one of the biggest hotspots in vans for rust. So unless your van is brand new, you need to inspect the condition of the metal floor underneath. This is the most important step in giving your van a clean bill of health before putting all that time, effort, and money into building your beautiful little camper van. Once the floor is out, you can properly clean the metal floor and inspect for rust. Treat anything that needs attention and then build your new subfloor properly from there. And again, don't throw out the old floor straight away. If you can reuse it, that's great. But regardless, whether it's old plywood, carpet, or even rubber matting, you can probably use it as a template for your new subfloor. The curved edges and the wheel arches make the subfloor one of the hardest components in your build to create a stencil for, so being able to use your previous subfloor is a huge win. Now, don't be surprised if, like my van here, what was a pretty clean subfloor turns out to be absolutely filthy underneath. Years of work life does that to a van, but what's important is that we clean all of this off to reveal exactly what the situation is underneath all that dirt. A couple of notes on the cleanup. Number 1, a face mask or having good ventilation is a great call here. You don't want this rusty dirt in your lungs. And number 2, using hot soapy water and the rough side of a sponge like I did here is fantastic for removing years of caked on dirt. Just be aware that if you're using water, you need to towel it dry and ideally leave it with a fan on it once you're done. If you leave this exposed floor pan moist for a few hours or overnight, then any surface rust can flash rust and spread like crazy. Now, like I said, this floor pan is a hotspot for rust, so some surface rust is certainly not unusual and it is absolutely manageable. But it's important that we do uncover it all before moving on to the next stage, which is to treat that rust. Obviously, we want to know where it all is before we start treating it. So if you want a head start on that step, you can remove these seals at the rear and side doors to clean and inspect. The rear door seal in particular is notorious for hiding rust, so be sure to remove those now and give them a good clean to see what the damage is. At this point, you've got a nice clean blank canvas, you're able to properly inspect for rust, and you know exactly what you're building on top of. In the next video, we're going to tackle exactly how to treat that rust and get this van ready for its conversion. If you found this video helpful, then check out my van conversion guide at journeyvanbuilds.com. I'm adding a heap of value in there as we tackle this build step by step. Thanks for watching, guys. I'll catch you on the next one.